In this project we're going to composite a subject that's been photographed against a black background. I'll just open up Mini-Bridge here to look for my subject, and we have it here. It's Andre, taken by the photographer Shane Monopoly, and we're just going to click and drag this on to my host image, which is a picture of Windsor Castle. Okay, now that we're finished with Mini-Bridge, I'll just double click to collapse that, and now we can try and move Andre into position. Okay, now I can't really see Windsor Castle behind Andre, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the Layers panel and just lower the opacity so I can see the background layer behind Andre. And then I'm going to click and drag and move Andre into position. I could also scale Andre just by coming up to one of the bounding box handles, holding down the Shift key to make sure I constrain the proportions of this image. Okay, I'm happy with the relative size between these two images, so I'm just going to return the opacity back up to 100% and commit the transform. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to make a selection of the black background using the Quick Selection tool. You'll see I've got Auto Enhance selected in the options bar here, and I'm just going to click and drag around that background. Okay, now you might find that some of the other areas that you don't want selected become selected. It's quite easy for the selection tool to move into this dark background, and if that happens we can just hold down the Alt or Option key and remove some areas such as these white feathers on the left hand side. Remove those from the selection. We also have a portion of the jacket down here in the lower right hand side of the image that also needs to be added. You may have trouble seeing that, and if we're having trouble seeing what we need to select, we can always add in a temporary levels adjustment layer. Okay, let's just remove that selection temporarily to see how we can actually do that. I'll just come back up and choose a levels adjustment layer, and we can actually make this image a good deal brighter. And so what we can now see is we can see very clearly where the subject ends and the black background starts, including on this difficult area around the hat. Okay, I'm just going to select Andre. Okay, before we make the selection, that's quite an important step there. We're just using the levels adjustment as a temporary reference to divide the tonal similarities. Okay, again with the Quick Selection tool and the Andre layer selected, I'm just going to come around and make that selection one more time. Okay, and as we can see, the portion of that jacket that I don't want has been selected, and I can hold down the Option key and take that out of the selection. And again with the little feathers on the side of the hat, again holding down the Option key and clicking to remove those from the selection. Okay, we can also go into quick mask mode to look at the accuracy of the selection we've just made. Just press the Q key on the keyboard in order to do that, and we can zoom in just to make sure that all parts of the selection is as perfect as we'd like them to be. Okay, I'll just do Command 0 on a Mac or Control 0 on a PC to zoom back out, and press the Q key to come out of quick mask mode. We don't need that levels adjustment layer anymore, so I'm just going to click and drag that to the mini trash can in the layers panel there to discard it. Now at the moment we have the background selected, not Andre, so we need to invert the selection. So we're just going to come up to the select menu and choose inverse. Okay, now we're ready to proceed into the Refine Edge dialog. If this button isn't available in the options bar, just make sure you've got a selection tool selected rather than a painting tool, or access it from the select menu. Okay, we're going to go into Refine Edge. Okay, and the reason we can see the background behind Andre is because in the View menu we have selected On Layers. Okay. Now let's just zoom in. I'm going to just use Command plus or Control plus on a PC until we get to 100% so we can look at the edge. Okay. Now at the moment it's not a bad selection that we've got here, but there's still some remnants of the old black background which I want to remove. I'm just going to zoom into double actual view so I can get a really clear idea of what's happening at that edge. Now typically when we're using quick selection tools or the Magic Wand tool, we often need to apply a small amount of smoothing so that the edge just looks a little bit more as if it's been cut out rather than torn from a folded piece of paper. Okay, this has created a little bit of softening. We might need a little bit more feather, especially if using the quick the Magic Wand tool has no feather option, and so can produce edges that are really way too hard for compositing. We can now use the Shift Edge slider to hide any of the black pixels from the old background. Okay, if I move that to the left, that will contract that mask nicely. I feel that the edge is perhaps just a little bit soft now, and so I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast back into the edge just to create a slightly sharper, clearly defined edge running along the side of that face. This is perhaps the most difficult of the edges to get right in this composition. So if you see that this edge is working quite nicely, as you scoot around, I'm holding the spacebar, as we move around the image here, we're seeing that all of the other edges are indeed good as well. There seems to be no evidence of that old black background on the sharper edges in this composition. I'll just Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC. We can see that all of the harder edges are actually very good at the moment. The softer edges, the feathers, leave a lot to be desired here. Okay, let's just zoom in on that area a few times so we can see the problem that we have working there. I'll just zoom out one so we're at 50%. Okay, now the way to fix these softer edges is to use the Refine Radius tool. I've got it selected here, and we can change the size of the Refine Radius tool using the option in the options bar here, or we can use the keyboard shortcuts that we use inside of the main editing space of Photoshop, which are the square bracket keys. Now the idea with this tool is just to paint over the edge of transition. Try not to move the brush too far into any areas of the image which should be 100% opaque. So I'm keeping that crosshair well outside any areas that should be 100% opaque or solid. Might have to reduce the size of the brush as we work alongside this edge very carefully to define those feather areas here. Now we're seeing a little bit more detail come into play, but it's still far from perfect. Now we can actually improve those feathers by using the Shift Edge slider and moving the other way, but what will tend to happen is we might get more detail, but we're also going to compromise the harder edges. So we're going to leave that at the -30 setting, which was optimum for the edges on the harder edges. Let's just zoom in and check that those are okay. Sometimes you get slightly awkward views or inaccurate views when you're zoomed out too far. Okay, so it's important to sometimes zoom in to either 50% or 100% to get a more accurate view there. Okay, the way we're going to actually get rid of the problem areas in those feathers, which are showing the old background here, is to use that decontaminate option. Okay, so let's just click on that decontaminate and move that slider slightly higher, perhaps as much as 75 or even 85 will give us the best detail with no evidence of that old background here. Okay, we're losing a little bit of detail down in here, and if you redo this project sometimes it's very difficult to get rid of that old black background even using the decontaminate feature. But we're going to look at a way we can resolve those problematic areas when we've been photographing on a black background. Okay, as soon as we click on the decontaminate colors, the fixed or refined edge will go to a new layer with a new layer mask. So let's just select OK at this stage. Okay, by default the original layer, which is a smart object, has been switched off, so the visibility is off on this layer. Now if we want to restore better fine detail in these lighter edges here, what we can do is we can switch this original layer back on, and so long as we've been photographing on a black background, we can switch the blend mode to the screen blend mode. Okay, so we're seeing a lot better fine detail now appear in those areas. Unfortunately, this compromises the harder edges, but we'll fix this later. I'll just pay attention now to these finer edges here. What we'll do is we'll just click on the top layer, and I'm clicking on the top layer mask there, so that's the active component. I'm going to select the brush tool. Just press the B on the keyboard to select the brush tool. I'm making sure that black is the foreground color, and I'm going to set this at a high opacity. I'll use 100% in this instance. Okay, now we're going to use a little bit of a softer brush than I had set previously, so we'll come down to maybe 60 or 70% there. Okay, and I'll just click away from that context menu in order to access the brush. Okay, now we're just going to increase the brush size slightly, and I'm just going to paint over, because what we're going to do is we're going to conceal the problematic area on this mask to reveal the better detail on the layer below in screen blend mode. And we can do this more gradually than I'm doing here. I'm doing it at 100%, so I do have to paint reasonably carefully at this value. Now you can see all of that fine detail and no evidence of that old background, which is hidden by the screen blend mode. You might also find you can pick up some superior detail by painting over the edges on the top here. Okay, we're getting a little bit of a color shift there, so I'm just going to Command Z or in order to Control Z on a PC in order to hide that last adjustment, and I'm going to lower the opacity this time to maybe 50%, and I'm also going to choose a much softer brush in this instance, 0% hardness, so that now when I paint over these areas I'm just bringing back maximum detail at that edges but not leaving any brush marks in my adjustments. Okay, let's just take that back into screen. Okay, now we're going to fix up the harder edges which have been compromised slightly by this screen layer here. We're going to add a layer mask. I'm just going to click on this original smart object layer and then click on the add layer mask icon at the base of the layers panel. I've still got the brush tool selected. I'm going to raise the opacity to 100%. You could press 0 on the keyboard if you like, and then painting into this layer mask I'm just going to push back to the original edge value that we have on the top layer there, and you might find that on any of the brighter edges we're going to need to make some of those adjustments. Okay, I'm just rolling down the edge of the jacket there to pull back to the better edge quality that we had on the refine edge layer above. Okay, so again just rolling around all of those edges, and that should leave the best of both worlds really. We have the best detail from the screen blend mode on the difficult feather edges, but we also have the best edges on the harder edges on this refine edge layer that we had created for us. Okay, probably we need to finish this project up. The new subject looks a little bit too saturated for the old background, and this is typical when you're doing compositing work. You need to balance either the white balance or contrast between the two layers in order to get a comfortable fit between the two. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select the top layer by clicking on it, and then I'm going to select a hue saturation adjustment layer. If you hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC and click, you're going to get the option to use previous layer to create clipping mask, because I don't want this adjustment layer to affect my background layer. So I'll just click on that and then select OK, and as you can see the hue saturation layer, let's just bring it further into play, is clipped to the layer underneath. If you forget to do this at that stage, you can always clip and unclip this adjustment layer using this icon at the base of the properties panel. As we can see there, it gets clipped and unclipped. Okay, what we're looking for is that little indented arrow there, and the layer it's clipped to adopts that underscore to show that this is the base layer of the clipping group. Now when I lower the saturation of the layer, it's only Andre whose saturation is going to be lowered. The castle behind him, the saturation values will stay as they are, and so we can balance the two values on these two layers, so we get a much more comfortable fit now in this composite project. Now this screen blend mode that we used earlier to fix the feathers, this works perfectly, but only if the background is absolute black. If it's slightly grey, then we're going to get a slight tide mark in the background. I'll just try and emulate this for you. Okay, I'm just going to go into this smart object, and I'm just going to put in a minor levels adjustment. I'm just going to make that background slightly grey, just by 9 or 10 levels, so to show you what will happen is if that background isn't absolutely black. You can see now that screen blend mode is actually, because it's not absolutely black, is creating a slight tonal difference between the black behind Andre and the background layer. This, if you are faced with this problem when photographing on a black background in a studio, we can resolve this just by coming to the layer with the black background, again coming and selecting this time a levels adjustment layer. Again, we'll clip it, so we'll hold down the Option or Alt key, and we'll just clip that to the base layer. And then all you need to do is, with the black input slider, just bring that in until we clip that very dark background to black, and that will remove the tide mark from this image. Okay, so that's a way of compensating if your black background isn't absolutely black. We're going to finish this project up by adding a border. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my mini bridge panel again. Let's just open that up, and we have a border for this file, and I'm going to drag this on. Before I drag this onto the layer, I'll select the top layer in the layers stack, because this is will be the new position for this border. It'll appear above the active layer, so I'll just click and drag that into position. Okay, I'll just collapse mini bridge by double clicking, and now we're going to position this into my host file. So we'll just push that up to the top left hand corner, and now I'm going to transform this to fit my host image, and like so. And when I've got a comfortable fit there, I'm just going to hit the commit transform icon here. And obviously we're going to use the secret screen blend mode, which we've learnt in this project is black can become transparent with that screen blend mode. So I'm just going to come up to the modes here for this layer and choose screen. Okay, and there is my custom border, my stylized border for this completed compositing project.